podcast. Now, I've been on the 5-minute mark. It was about 8 months ago now. And the reason that I've waited this long to make the testimonial is because I'm always really interested to see in what happens after an engagement and how people behave once the engagement's over, when there's really nothing left in it for them to gain. And I have to say that Dennis has been absolutely fantastic. Now, I'll talk about that in just a second, but I want to get to the results that I got from the podcast, because that's probably what everybody's really interested, right? So I've tracked back to the podcast in direct sales around $25,000 to $27,000 in sales as a direct result of people finding me from the podcast. So that's a really, really fantastic result for me. But on top of that, it's not just the direct sales that I can track back to the podcast. It's also the sales that I can attribute to it from being in a podcast next to Russell Brunson, for example. That's really priceless, and you just can't put a price on that. So
feeling tired. And I did a bunch of jumping jacks over here because I was worried that before I got on, because I was worried my energy wouldn't be high enough. And then you started with me about do this and look up here and blah, blah, blah. And this was if you listen to my podcast, this was the most energetic podcast I've done. You know, I must probably have done about 10 or 15 of them now, you know, with other people. And you are very good at getting people energized and out there and stuff.
It's very different from other podcasts. Dennis really cares. Like, he just doesn't want you to come on the podcast and go through the normal interview. He's really trying to help you get better all the time and see how you can help more people. So, and I really see him as a bit of a mentor, you know. So I was able to share my message with his audience, and I was also able to learn a ton from him. So he's very giving, comes from his heart.
Full of energy, full of passion. If you're looking for a podcast that is just gonna give you that stamina that you're looking for and give you great information, don't look anymore.
He never said anything. We'd all know, hey, this cat knows what he's doing. The backdrop, I gotta get a backdrop.
Okay, and that's what I meant. And this is what I meant when Matt said, you know, when you walk in the room, how do you differentiate yourself? This is what I meant. Like
your brand or so. I didn't expect it to be that. Sorry, I'm honest. I'm so German.
I love the honesty.
And straightforward. Yeah, it's way better than I expected. Somehow there is. Depth in your guidance and also in how you provide the value for the audience and how you pull them in, which was just not visible through the Facebook post or little glimpses I got. So it's beautiful. So if I can serve you by writing a testimonial from my perspective being on your podcast, I would love to do so, because it's a very unique experience. You are not just a podcast host, you are a podcast mentor / coach who coached me while interviewing me. Brilliant, absolutely brilliant. And none of the other podcast hosts did that. And Sam, he was making sure I was on target, on point of the message, connected with the audience, delivering value. And he modulated and shaped me like an artist shapes a beautiful sculpture. I'm so hyped up. I'm so happy what he and I produced here together. And it really shocked me positively, because I didn't expect that. I expect he asked me some questions, I give some answers, it will be good, done. No. It went so deep, it was so beautifully crafted, and now all the preparation for the podcast makes so much sense. I'm so grateful that he is so thorough. I think he's up-leveling the podcasting industry with what he's providing here, because he is really playing a different game here.
When Dennis had me as a guest, man, he just drew the best out of me. He taught me to be vulnerable. He got me to be vulnerable. And everyone's been contacting me now about being on their podcast because they saw me, Greg Walker, the Big Dreamer, on Dennis's podcast. So Dennis, thank you. I want to thank you for helping me become a better person, to be phenomenal in my speaking career and getting on other podcasts.
Which has been one of the most fun podcasts that I've ever been on. He has such a professional air to him, the way he carries himself, the way his set is set up, the way the audio works. And that was something that Christina first told me. She's like, you gotta check this guy Dennis out. He takes this stuff really seriously. He's very sincerely devoted to making a beautiful product and really impacting people. And I've seen that through everything he's done.
I've met him at conferences, at events, and I've just seen his work, and just to see how he lights up and how as a result that he makes his guest lineup as well. It's just really exciting and inspiring to see.
I've been interviewed a ton. I've been on dozens and dozens of shows, and what really makes a podcast stick out and makes it fun and makes the good stuff flow is having somebody that can guide the conversation, that can ask a question, but then go layers deeper to get the good stuff. And that's what Dennis did.
So I've done a little bit of a podcast interview, but it was nothing crazy. And at the end, I just didn't feel very good about it. I kind of left feeling dejected, like, oh, I should have said this, and I wasn't really sure how to explain what I did. And so the first thing I said to him when we chatted on the phone was, I know what I do, I'm not really sure how to convey the value and the impact in what I do. So he chatted with me for a long time and really pulled out the questions, was getting me to the nitty-gritty, the core of what I do. And so as we sat down, I'm a teacher, and so not everyone can relate to a teacher because they're in the kind of business world, though he could totally relate to me. And he's like, yeah, so this is what teachers are feeling. And then ultimately he's like, you put smiles back on their faces. He's like, that's one of your big impacts. That's what you do. And I was like, I've never thought of it that way. So I wrote down 4 pages of notes that day from our call, and I did homework. I went back through our notes, and he had really constructive advice, specific things for me to do, sent me templates. And so I got to work on this whole smiling thing, and I put together a whole speaker sheet based on this premise that I bring back the smiles to teachers. And oh my, like, it makes me smile thinking about it. So I created this whole one sheet, and he also had the idea to talk to other people and like, well, what impact did you make with them? So I chatted with my sister. So when I chatted with her, I got her words and put them together with the whole smile thing, and I came up with this amazing just clarity, this guide. And now I feel like I've got a lot of great talking points. And I ran it by, I had this mastermind copy team, and I ran my speaker sheet by them, and they were like, Jen, this is amazing. Like, you've done a really great job. So I feel like this was a turning point for me and my clarity. And I've been working on this for over a year. And I feel like now I'm ready to broadcast my message all over the country. And I don't feel like the hesitancy or that fog that you're like, I'm just not really sure about what to say. Now I'm like, okay, bring it on. I feel like I've got this direction and this clarity, and now I'm on fire. So
we had a lot of people contact us, and we wanted to come back just to answer all the questions. You have built a incredible following. And it's clearly growing. And so being back for the second time as a 5-Minute Bark guest was just a huge privilege. And I want to thank you for everything you're doing for entrepreneurs that are listening to you, for the people who have found you and are kind of following you to make the next move in their lives, and for being so transparent as an interviewer. You make it really easy for all of us who are on your podcast. Thanks, brother.